If you think semen retention is the preserve of Tibetan monks, perfect men, or enlightened gurus, you're completely mistaken. This guide is for the lazy, for those who hate complications, for those who prefer the simple path, and most importantly, for those who are tired of wasting energy trying to improve their lives without knowing where to begin. The truth is, you don't need superhuman strength. You just need to stop wasting what you already have. Most men live exhausted because they confuse effort with evolution. They work too much, ejaculate too much, think too much, and in the end, they have no energy for anything. They want to change the world, but they can't change their own bodies. That's why this book is for you, the wise, lazy person. The one who has no patience for miracle methods, but has the intelligence to realize that everything starts with conserving one's own vital energy. Semen retention isn't penance. It's an act of spiritual cunning. It's a man saying to the universe, I've stopped wasting my inner gold. When you understand this, you realize you don't need to fight desire. You just need to change its direction. The truly lazy will love this philosophy because it teaches what they've always known. The secret to life isn't in doing more, but in spending less. Here you won't find impossible commandments or moralistic speeches. You'll find practical wisdom, a philosophy of lightness, constancy, and self-mastery. We'll discuss how the body changes, how energy transforms, and how even the most undisciplined person can become a silent powerhouse. Because retention is not for the strong. It is for the conscious. And the awakened slacker is, in fact, the most conscious of all. Prepare to laugh, relate, and perhaps be surprised by the simplicity of the transformation. You'll discover that retention isn't a sacrifice, it's an art, and that laziness, when guided by awareness, is the quickest shortcut to inner power. So relax, breathe, and read slowly. The slower you go, the deeper you'll understand what it truly means. Retain energy and expand the soul. Most men go through life without understanding the power they carry between their legs. It's no exaggeration to say that the greatest energy generator in the human body resides there. Semen retention isn't abstinence, repression, or a religious vow, it's energetic awareness. It's the act of directing upward the energy you unconsciously expend every day. And when you understand this, you begin to realize how much you've been draining the fuel of your own greatness. The human body is a divine machine. Everything in it was designed to conserve, multiply, and transform energy. The problem is that modern society has taught humans to waste what is most valuable, their vital essence. Every time you ejaculate without purpose, you give up your inner gold, the very gold that could fuel your mental, spiritual, and creative strength, into the void. It's like trading a diamond for a chocolate coin. Semen retention is simple, but it's not easy. It starts when you decide to stop acting on autopilot. When you realize that immediate pleasure doesn't mean true satisfaction. The lazy man who understands this is already ahead, because instead of killing himself trying 1,000 techniques, he learns the essentials: conserve and redirect. And that is the secret that transforms laziness into wisdom. Imagine your body as a power plant. Semen is the raw energy that keeps all the turbines running. When you waste this energy frequently, you're constantly turning the system off and on again, wasting resources that could be invested in your evolution. Retaining it is learning to keep the light on, constant, steady, and silent. It's energy conservation in its purest form. The person who practices retention feels the difference in the first few days. The mind clears, the gaze gains depth, and the body seems to respond with more vitality. Not because he's become a saint, but because he's stopped wasting his own strength. It's like closing a hole in the bottom of a bucket. The water finally begins to fill. And the lazy person who does this understands that true cleverness is spending less to live more. The big misconception is that retention is about not having sex. It's not. It's about control, the impulsion transmute energy. The man who masters his desire doesn't become cold, he becomes conscious. He learns to transform desire into direction and impulse into purpose. And when this happens, his sexual energy begins to work for his greatness, not against it. Being lazy, in this context, can even be an advantage. The authentically lazy person hates wasted effort, and retention is precisely about efficiency. Instead of spending hours punishing themselves for relapses, they learn to conserve energy without drama. They do less, but they do it consciously. And awareness is the most powerful tool for overcoming any addiction. Retention is an internal game. There are no medals, no applause, only self-mastery. The man who retains doesn't seek external approval, but seeks internal balance. He understands that his semen is not the enemy, but a form of raw power that needs direction. And whoever learns to direct this force also learns to govern their own mind, their own body, and their own destiny. What few realize is that the world respects the man who masters his instincts. He emanates something different, a silent yet magnetic presence. It's the kind of energy that doesn't need to be shouted to be felt. And when the lazy person reaches this point, they discover they never needed to chase anything. They just had to stop wasting what they already had within them. Semen retention is, in essence, an invitation to awaken. It's about looking within and recognizing the power you've been giving away for free. It's the first step toward transforming laziness into potency and fatigue into clarity. In the end, the man who retains semen doesn't become someone new. He simply returns to being what he always was, an inexhaustible source of creative energy. Have you ever woken up tired even after a good night's sleep? Have you ever felt like your mind was in blue screen mode, with no desire to do anything? This isn't ordinary laziness, it's a lack of vital energy. Most men live drained because their bodies expend too much energy producing something they waste without thinking: semen. The body exhausts itself creating life, and the man throws that life away in minutes of empty pleasure. Then he wonders why he lives without motivation. When you ejaculate frequently, your body enters a cycle of constant rebuilding. It needs to produce new sperm, replenish nutrients, and rebalance hormones. This consumes vital energy, magnesium, zinc, and protein, everything that should fuel your brain, focus, and stamina. It's as if your body works overtime every day but never gets a break. The result: fatigue, apathy, irritation, and that strange emptiness that nothing can fill. Modern man confuses physical fatigue with a lack of meaning. But the problem isn't the body, it's wasted energy. Every time you exhaust yourself on impulse, your mind loses its luster, your posture changes, and your presence fades. Your gaze loses its firmness, your body loses its density. And the worst part is that man thinks it's normal to live this way, as if discouragement were part of adult life. It isn't. It's just a lack of vital energy. The common lazy person sleeps to escape life. The wise lazy person rests to recharge. There's a huge difference between escaping the world and refueling to face it. When you conserve your sexual energy, rest truly begins to work. One night's sleep is worth two. The body regenerates faster, and the mind awakens with clarity. This is what happens when you stop wasting fuel and learn to tend to your inner fire. The human body is a powerhouse that works with priorities. If you make it produce too much semen, it wastes energy on that and fails to nourish the rest. That's why so many men have sluggish minds, dull skin, and a vitality that fades over time. Semen is like liquid gold, and a man who constantly wastes gold can't complain about energy poverty. Laziness, in fact, is a body crying out for savings. But here's the secret: the intelligent lazy person understands that they don't need to do more, but rather waste less. They discover that vitality doesn't come from expensive supplements or too much coffee, but from the simple decision to retain every drop that remains inside is reused by the body, circulating, regenerating, and strengthening. The body works less, the spirit works more. This is true productive laziness. You realize you're exhausted when nothing excites you. Not a dream, not a challenge, not even pleasure itself. This is the symptom of a man disconnected from his vital energy. But it only takes a few days of withholding to feel the inner flame return. Motivation returns, posture changes, and your gaze regains presence. It's not magic, it's biology combined with consciousness. The energy that once drained away now begins to rise. The average person's fatigue is invisible but destructive. They try to compensate with food, social media, pornography, caffeine, anything to simulate the energy they've lost. But the awakened lazy person realizes that true fuel doesn't come from outside. It comes from their own semen, from the energy they choose to conserve and transmute. True rest begins when you learn to turn off the internal taps. And make no mistake, the world wants you exhausted. A tired person doesn't create, doesn't lead, and doesn't think clearly. Therefore, holding back is an act of silent rebellion. It's refusing to be a slave to instant pleasure and choosing lasting power. The lazy person who understands this becomes wise, because, by conserving energy, they begin to live in strategic mode, not survival mode. In the end, you're not tired of life. You're tired of wasting your own strength. Retention restores the radiance that excess has dulled. It's the secret to true rest, calm energy, and solid presence. When you stop fighting your body and start cooperating with it, you discover you were never lazy, you were just drained. And now, finally, you begin to charge your own battery from the inside out. Enthusiasm is beautiful, but it's also treacherous. Many men discover retention and, in their excitement, decide to become monks within 24 hours. They vow to never touch themselves again, never think about sex again, never feel desire again. And within days, they're relapsing with guilt and shame. This is the classic mistake of those who try to run before they can walk. Retention isn't a marathon of brute strength, it's a journey of awareness. The human mind hates extremes. When you try to permanently eliminate something that's been present for years, the brain interprets it as a threat. It resists, sabotages, creates excuses, fantasies, and relapses. This is why the overly disciplined person quickly becomes frustrated. The lazy person, on the other hand, is smart. They don't try to eliminate instinct, they just understand it. They learn to negotiate with their own desire, and little by little, transform it into a creative force. Being radical about withholding is like holding your breath thinking you'll live longer. It doesn't work. The secret isn't fighting desire, but learning to breathe with it, naturally, without guilt, and without rushing. The man who understands this stops falling into the cycle of self-punishment. And the lazy man who understands this discovers true power, doing less and evolving more, with ease and consistency. The 24-hour monk lives at war with himself. Every stimulus is an enemy, every thought a threat. He spends the day tense, repressed, controlling everything. And when the mind tires, instinct wins. The man who walks calmly, on the other hand, learns to observe his own impulses like one observing a cloud. He watches them pass, takes a deep breath, and lets them go. It is this state of tranquility that transforms retention into freedom, not imprisonment. The lazy person has something the overly disciplined person lacks: patience. They don't want quick results, they want real results. While the lightning monk blames himself for failing, the consciously lazy person learns from each setback. They understand that progress is made from well-interpreted failures. With each attempt, they learn more about themselves, and self-knowledge is the foundation of all mastery. The radical's mistake is to think that retention is strength. But in reality, it's subtlety. It's about transforming tension into intention, not about locking the body. The wise man understands that absolute control is a form of weakness in disguise. And the lazy man, by nature, doesn't have the patience to be fanatical. He prefers to be efficient. He learns the essentials, applies them at his own pace, and goes further because he doesn't exhaust himself trying to be perfect. When you try to become a monk in 24 hours, you're trying to skip the process. And nature hates shortcuts. Every seed needs time to germinate, grow, and flourish. The same goes for your energy. The lazy person who accepts this wins because they don't put pressure on their body. They listen to it. And when you learn to listen to your body teaches you the path to true retention. Many men relapse because they confuse retention with repression. To repress is to stifle desire, to retain is to transform it. A repressed man is tense, anxious, and emotionally fragile. A man who consciously retains is calm, stable, and magnetic. The former lives in fear of his own body, the latter masters it with serenity. The lazy man who understands this saves energy and suffering. When I started with semen retention, I felt a bit lost, not knowing where to begin. That's why I created a straight-to-the-point ebook, with everything I wish I had learned at the beginning. It's a clear, simple, and safe step-by-step guide. The link is in the first pinned comment. Just click. Retention isn't about becoming a saint, it's about becoming whole. It's about understanding that desire isn't your enemy, but your teacher. The sexual impulse is one of the purest forces in nature, and when you direct it, it transforms into mental and spiritual power. The lazy person who learns this realizes that the secret isn't fighting fire, but learning to cook with it. In the end, the mistake isn't starting out excited, but thinking that enlightenment comes from haste. The man who wants to master his body in 24 hours is the same one who gives up in 48. The lazy man who walks slowly arrives at his destination smiling. Because he understands the secret, it's not about rushing, it's about sustaining. And sustaining one's energy, day after day, is what transforms laziness into power. The beauty of retention is that it doesn't require perfection, it requires presence. The lazy person who understands this discovers the power of simplicity. You don't need to live in a temple or spend the day meditating. Just start with small daily choices that preserve energy instead of wasting it. It's like saving change that, over time, becomes an energetic fortune. The secret lies in the minimum you do every day. The first step, I observe the impulse. A self-respecting lazy person doesn't fight desire, they observe it. When the urge arises, instead of rushing to relieve themselves, they take a deep breath, shift their focus, and ask themselves, what do I really need right now? Sometimes it's rest, sometimes it's purpose, sometimes it's boredom. This simple pause changes everything. Because when you observe, the impulse loses its power. The second step is control the environment. The intelligent lazy person knows he's not a hero, he's strategic. He eliminates triggers, adjusts the context. Fewer screens, less stimulation, more silence. He creates an environment that doesn't trigger him to fall. Not because he's weak, but because he's smart. The energy he saves by avoiding unnecessary temptations is the same energy that begins to fuel his focus and magnetism. Third, move your body. No need for a gym or intense training. The spiritually lazy understands that the body is a guiding thread. Walking, breathing deeply, stretching, all of this makes energy circulate. And when energy moves, desire transforms. The secret is not to suppress the fire, but to make it flow through other channels. Each conscious breath is a reminder, I control energy, not the other way around. Room, create a simple purpose. The person who practices retention without reason ends up relapsing. But the smart slacker chooses something light yet powerful, having more focus, sleeping better, being calmer, feeling more present. He turns practice into a game. And every game needs a goal. When the desire arises, he remembers why, and the no stops being a sacrifice and becomes a conscious choice. Fifth, accept setbacks wisely. A conscious slacker doesn't blame himself, he learns. Each fall shows where his focus has strayed. Instead of giving up, he adjusts his strategy. He understands that retention is a ladder, not an elevator. Each step is a small victory, and the rest between steps is part of the journey. The difference is that he never stops climbing, even slowly. Sixth, transmute desire. When you feel the urge, don't run, breathe. Direct your attention to your heart, visualize the energy rising up your spine. It sounds simple, and it is. The energy that was previously weighing you down begins to rise. It's like redirecting a river that once flooded everything and now irrigates your inner lands. The lazy one who learns this discovers the most powerful alchemy, transforming impulse into inspiration. Seventh, keep your body light. Eat in moderation, drink pure water, and avoid excess. A heavy body weighs down the mind. And retention is a flight, not a burden. Eating and sleeping well is the kind of laziness the wise man values. It is active rest, the kind that recharges energy for the next day. The lighter the body, the easier it is to control impulses. Eighth, celebrate progress. The smart slacker doesn't seek perfection, he seeks consistency. He celebrates each week accomplished, each setback avoided, each morning with more energy. He understands that retention isn't a penance, it's a privilege. With each day he conserves energy, he feels his power grow, and this becomes fuel to keep going. Breast, use laziness as an ally. The natural slacker hates futile effort. So they channel this, why waste energy on quick pleasure when I can save it for something greater? This mindset turns the slacker into a strategist. They don't fight desire, they manage it intelligently. And before they know it, they're already experiencing retention naturally, without drama or effort. And finally, the 10th. Remember that detention is not imprisonment, it is freedom. The lazy person who understands this lives lightly because he carries no guilt. He simply learned the value of his own energy. And when you learn this, you no longer need military discipline. You act for pleasure, not obligation. And it is thus, with lightness and wisdom, that even the laziest of men becomes master of their own life force. Most men believe that transmuting sexual energy requires mystical techniques, complicated breathing, and hours of meditation. But the wise lazy man knows, true transmutation happens in everyday life, in the simple act of choosing where your energy goes. It's not about controlling desire, it's about redirecting the flow. When a man understands this, he discovers he can change his own life effortlessly, simply by being present. Sexual energy is the purest form of creative force that exists. It's the same impulse that makes a cell divide, a flower bloom, and a man create an empire. When you waste this energy, the body understands that life doesn't need to expand. But when you conserve it, the inner universe begins to work in your favor. Ideas emerge, focus increases, and laziness transforms into silent power. Transmuting is simple. It's about changing the channel of energy. Does desire arise? Direct it. Instead of letting it escape through your body, send it to your heart, to work, to a project, to training, to silence. Each time you redirect the impulse, you're refining the gold within. It's like transforming vapor into light. The same fire that once burned now illuminates. And best of all, it happens naturally, without the need for formulas. Effortless transmutation happens when body and mind begin to cooperate. The lazy person who learns to relax and breathe on impulse realizes something magical. Desire, instead of bothering, begins to inspire. There's no need to run away or repress it. Just feel it and let it rise. It's as if the body is saying, "Thank you for listening to me." At that moment, the energy rises on its own, light as sacred smoke. The secret isn't fight against instinct. The man who tries too hard to control becomes exhausted. But the man who observes transforms. Sexual energy is not an enemy to be defeated, it is a current to be guided. When the lazy understands this, he relaxes, and by relaxing, he wins. Transmutation happens when the inner fire finds direction, not resistance. All energy needs purpose. If you just hold back the semen but don't give it a destination, it stagnates. Therefore, the consciously lazy person creates simple goals: reading, writing, training, helping someone, creating something new. The size of the goal doesn't matter, the movement matters. Energy is like a river. If it doesn't flow, it rots. If it flows, it gives life. And you are the one who decides where it goes. Transmuting is like lighting a candle. All it takes is intention and presence. When the impulse arises, take a deep breath, feel the warmth in your body, and think of something you want to build. This simple mental shift redirects the flow of energy. Over time, you realize that desire is no longer something that dominates you, it's a force that serves you. The lazy discover that true power lies in doing the minimum with maximum awareness. Many men fail at retention because they think it's about not doing. But retention isn't inertia, it's transformation. Energy needs to circulate. The smart lazy person knows that it's enough to be present, while eating, working, breathing. Everything becomes meditation, everything becomes a channel. They realize they don't need long rituals, just attention in the present. And the present, when lived with heightened energy, is the very temple of transmutation. When you begin to master this art, the world perceives you differently. Your gaze changes, your voice changes, your posture changes. It's not magic, it's pure magnetism. Transmuted sexual energy creates presence. It's what makes people listen to you without understanding why. And the lazy, who once thought himself apathetic, now becomes irresistible, not through effort, but through vibrancy. Ultimately, effortless transmutation is about trust. Trusting that your body knows the way, that desire is sacred, and that energy wants to rise. The person who relaxes into this truth ceases to be a slave to pleasure and becomes a master of creation. They don't tire, they don't blame themselves, they simply flow. And in this fluidity, the lazy find what the disciplined still seek: balance, peace, and inner power. We live in a world that glorifies haste. Everything needs to be fast, quick success, quick pleasure, immediate results. And that's why almost no one gets anywhere. Semen retention is the opposite of this. It teaches the value of slowness. The lazy man, by nature, understands this better than anyone. He knows that the secret is not in rushing, but in sustaining. The tortoise doesn't rush, but always arrives. The human body loves rhythm. Like nature, It doesn't work in peaks, but in cycles. When you practice retention calmly, the body adapts, the nervous system stabilizes, and the mind becomes more harmonious. Those who strive for results in a week live on an emotional roller coaster, sometimes euphoric, sometimes exhausted. The wise lazy man avoids this. He walks slowly, but each step is firm. He knows that consistency trumps intensity. Retention is like planting a tree. At first, nothing seems to happen, and that's when the impatient give up. But the lazy, accustomed to time, observes the process wisely. They understand that true growth happens underground, silent, invisible, but constant. And one day, without warning, the seed sprouts powerfully. What seemed like slowness was merely maturation. A person who lives at a fast pace loses sensitivity. Their energy rises and falls like a pendulum, never achieving balance. The slow person, on the other hand, observes, feels, and perceives every internal change. They notice the moment when energy accumulates, when the body asks for rest, when the mind clears. Turtle mode is the ideal state for transmutation, continuous movement, without anxiety, without resistance. Being slow isn't being weak. It's being strategic. The lazy person who practices retention with calmness conserves energy because they don't waste strength in haste. They don't run to get there quickly. They walk so they don't have to go back. This is the difference between those who seek quick pleasure and those who build lasting power. Slowness becomes discipline disguised as calm. All of nature vibrates slowly. The sun rises unhurriedly, the tides rise and fall at the right time, the heart beats in a steady rhythm. Retention follows the same principle. It flourishes in the body's time, not the mind's. The impatient man wants to dominate the process. The calm man merges with it. The intelligent sluggard, without knowing it, is already in harmony with the universe, because he has learned to respect his own rhythm. In turtle mode, every small step forward is a victory. An extra day of retention, a setback overcome, a morning with more focus. The slow person celebrates every sign. He understands that spiritual evolution is made up of invisible details. The body responds slowly, but responds faithfully. And when the transformation comes, it is lasting. It doesn't disappear overnight. The lazy person who embraces slowness discovers something valuable. Calm is power. While the world races for stimuli, he remains centered. While others relapse from anxiety, he remains stable through awareness. His energy becomes dense, magnetic, and firm. He doesn't need to prove anything, because his presence already speaks for himself. Slowness breeds depth, and depth breeds respect. Retention, at its core, is an art of patience. It's about learning to savor the process, not just seeking the result. When a person stops demanding of themselves, the body relaxes, instincts balance, and energy begins to rise naturally. It is in this state that true power flourishes, silent, constant, and unbreakable. The turtle never tires because it is never in a hurry. In the end, turtle mode is the mode of masters. It's the pace of those who understand that life isn't a race, it's a journey. The lazy man who walks slowly but doesn't stop gets further than the disciplined man who lives fast and frustrated. Because strength isn't in speed, but in consistency. And consistency, when lived with ease, transforms even the slowest of men into an invisible giant. Every man who enters retention believes the ideal is to never fall. But true learning begins precisely when you fall. A relapse isn't a punishment, it's a mirror. It shows where you still act automatically, where your mind still seeks quick relief, and where you lack presence. The mistake isn't relapsing, it's not learning from it. The lazy man, when he makes a mistake, doesn't blame himself. He observes, understands, and adjusts his path. Guilt is one of the greatest enemies of retention. It saps energy, generates anxiety, and puts you in a cycle of self-sabotage. You feel bad, promise to change, and out of guilt, relapse again. The wise lazy person breaks this cycle because they don't waste energy on guilt, they prefer to use it to understand what happened. They don't judge themselves, they study themselves. And every person who observes themselves sincerely evolves. Relapse, when viewed consciously, is a lesson. It reveals what still dominates you, what still throws you off balance, what is still unhealed within you. Sometimes, it's not physical desire, but lack, boredom, stress, emptiness. The lazy person who understands this stops fighting the symptom and starts treating the cause. They transform each mistake into a step of wisdom, and this makes them unbeatable. The person who blames themselves is trapped in the past. But the person who accepts their mistake with lucidity remains in the present, and the present is where energy flows again. The body doesn't understand guilt, it understands vibration. And when you forgive yourself, the energy flow is restored. Guilt blocks, forgiveness releases. That's why the relaxed slacker evolves faster than the tense fanatic. It allows learning to flow. The conscious slacker sees progress differently. He doesn't measure success in streak days, but in levels of presence. Each relapse analyzed is an invisible step forward. He understands that retention is not a competition, it's an internal journey. Sometimes, the soul needs to fall to learn to rise with humility. And when a person learns this, practice ceases to be an obligation and becomes self-knowledge. The key is to transform guilt into clarity. Instead of saying, "I failed," say, "I discovered where I need to improve." This simple shift in language changes everything. The brain understands that there is no defeat, only learning. Relapse is no longer the end, but becomes part of the process. The wise lazy person understands that mistakes, when well digested, nourish the conscience. It is the stumble that strengthens the walker's legs. There's also the energetic aspect. Every time you waste semen, your body loses density for a few days, but if you keep your mind calm, your energy replenishes faster. The secret is to stay focused on your practice. Even after falling, keep breathing, meditating, eating well, and moving. This way, your body understands that its purpose remains. It's like a river that, even after a detour, returns to its natural course. The person who learns to deal with setbacks without drama becomes invincible. Because they stop living between extremes, guilt and euphoria, and enter the neutral state of wisdom. They know that growth is made up of small falls and great new beginnings. The lazy person, by not rushing, enjoys each one. And each time they start over lighter, more aware, and stronger. The world values those who never make mistakes, but life respects those who never give up. Retention is a training ground for the soul. It teaches you to fall gracefully and rise with determination. The man who understands this stops fearing mistakes and starts using them as fuel. Relapse becomes energy recycling. Nothing is lost, everything is transformed. In the end, what defines a true practitioner is not how many days they can hold on, but how many times they wake up with greater awareness. The wise sluggard doesn't pursue perfection, he seeks permanence. And permanence is born of lightness. When you stop demanding of yourself and begin to understand yourself, your body stops fighting you and starts fighting you by you. And that's where retention stops being effort and becomes nature. The body is wise. It doesn't need strength, it needs balance. When you stop wasting semen, something silent and powerful begins to happen. The body reorganizes its energy. The vitality that was previously used to replenish what you threw away begins to nourish organs, muscles, and even thoughts. It's as if the entire system breathes a sigh of relief and says, "Now I can work on your growth." In the first few days, a man feels his body react. More vigor upon waking, deeper breathing, more restorative sleep. The skin glows, the gaze becomes firm, and the mind becomes more stable. It's not a placebo. Semen contains hundreds of nutrients, amino acids, and minerals that, when preserved, are reabsorbed and redistributed. It's literally vital energy circulating. The lazy one who learns this realizes that the body does the work itself, you just have to stay out of the way. The face changes. The gaze gains depth, the voice deepens, the body aligns. Retention doesn't create a new man, it reveals the original man. The body begins to express what it always was, but was hidden beneath fatigue and addiction. It's as if nature says, "Now that you've stopped stealing my energy, I can show you who you really are." And this process is automatic. The body knows what to do. The brain also transforms. Dopamine, previously consumed in pleasure spikes, begins to stabilize. You feel more focus, more clarity, and less anxiety. The energy that previously sank now rises to nourish the brain. And the more it rises, the more conscious you become. The spiritually lazy understands this naturally. They realize they don't need to control the body, just create the internal environment for it to flourish. The most subtle, Yet most powerful, change is energetic. The field around the body, what many call the aura, expands. People sense your presence even before you speak. It's the magnetism of concentrated energy. The man who wastes lives invisible. The man who retains becomes noticeable. And the most curious thing is that the lazy person makes no effort at all. Their mere calmness already makes them magnetic. A body in retention enters regenerative mode. Cells renew faster, posture improves, and the immune system strengthens. This happens because the body is finally no longer in loss mode. It's like a company that stopped spending and started investing. The energy balance grows, and the body uses this gain to rebuild what was weak. The person feels this as a physical and mental lightness. The wise lazy person realizes they don't need to fight their body. It is their own ally. While many try to force results with diets and exhausting routines, they simply conserve energy. And the body, grateful, responds with balance. Retention becomes a partnership. You offer awareness, the body offers power. It's a silent pact between instinct and soul. Over time, man begins to feel more whole. There is no longer a division between mind and body, desire and purpose. Everything flows through a single channel. The energy that once flowed from one point now fills the entire system. It is the natural state of the restored human being. The lazy, ironically, gets there faster because they don't try to control the process, they just trust it. There's also an emotional transformation. Irritation diminishes, patience grows, and mood balances. This happens because sexual energy is emotionally dense. When retained and refined, it purifies the nervous system. The man stops reacting impulsively and begins to act with wisdom. His presence becomes calm, firm, and respectable. He doesn't talk much, but when he does, the energy speaks with him. Ultimately, retention shows that the body is the temple and semen is the fuel. When you conserve, the temple lights up. And the best part is that all of this happens naturally, like a plant that grows when it receives sunlight and water. The lazy sage only waters, the body does the rest. And that's the beauty of retention. It proves that evolution doesn't come from effort, but from the harmony between consciousness and nature. Society teaches that laziness is a defect, but within the context of retention, it can be a virtue. The lazy person, when awakened, understands something few others do. Energy is the most valuable commodity there is, and the secret is to spend as little as possible and obtain as much as possible. This is retention in essence. While the disciplined person forces their body to exhaustion, the wise lazy person conserves energy and directs it with surgical precision. They waste neither effort, nor semen, nor intention. Laziness, when understood, is simply the natural instinct to conserve energy. Nature is lazy in the best sense. Everything in it operates efficiently. The river doesn't struggle to flow, it flows along the easiest path. The tree doesn't try to grow faster, it grows at the right pace. The person who practices retention with this mindset stops fighting the body and begins to cooperate with it. This is intelligent laziness, and it's what makes it unbeatable. The awakened sluggard doesn't seek the shortest path, he seeks the most efficient. He understands that retention isn't about strength, but about direction. Instead of wasting energy trying to resist the impulse, he learns to redirect it gently. He breathes, observes, and allows the desire to transform. While the disciplined person fights with his own mind, the sluggard simply observes, and this serenity is what makes him triumph. Being lazy is dangerous when you live on autopilot, but it's a blessing when you live awake. The person who channels laziness to their advantage becomes a strategist. They avoid waste, and that's what retention is, energy management. Every thought, every emotion, and every action becomes an investment. They expend less energy, and therefore have more energy available. While others deplete, they expand. Laziness becomes an ally when it's conscious. The awakened lazy person asks themselves, is it worth wasting energy on this? And almost always, the answer is no. They conserve reactions, emotions, and words. They live in total energy economy. And it's precisely this economy that makes them vibrate high, because the energy that isn't expended outside accumulates inside, and the person who accumulates energy becomes magnetic. The man who practices retention with conscious laziness is like a general who knows when to attack and when to retreat. He doesn't move on impulse, he moves strategically. If he feels like it, he breathes. If he feels tired, he rests. There is no struggle, there is harmony. And it is this harmony that creates the silent power others call presence. He doesn't say he practices retention. His body speaks for him. Everything I'm explaining to you here, I've already organized calmly in my ebook The Power of Semen Retention. I wrote it with those starting from scratch in mind and needing a practical guide, without fluff or exaggeration. It's exactly the material I wish they had given me at the beginning. The secret is to understand that rest is also retention. When the body relaxes, energy reorganizes. When the mind is silent, semen transforms. The spiritually lazy understands that conscious idleness is alchemy. He may be lying down, but his energy is rising. He may appear still, but inside there is movement. This is the paradox of retention. The man who appears to do the least is the one who evolves the most. Laziness also protects against anxiety. The agitated person relapses into haste. He wants results, he wants pleasure, he wants everything now. The lazy person doesn't. He knows how to wait, he knows how to observe, he knows how to let time do its work. This patience makes him immune to temptation. He understands that everything great needs maturation. And while others burn themselves out trying to speed up the process, he blossoms slowly, but with deep roots. Over time, the lazy person who practices retention realizes that he lives at a different pace. His energy is stable, his mind is clear, and his body vibrates in peace. He doesn't need to prove anything or compete. He simply exists, and his mere presence inspires. Laziness is no longer a defect and has become wisdom, because the person who doesn't waste energy lives in abundance. In the end, retention and laziness form the perfect pair. One conserves energy, the other teaches how to use it wisely. When united by awareness, they create a man who is calm on the outside and powerful on the inside. The world rushes by, he observes. The world wears down, he recharges. And that is why the awakened slacker wins in silence, because he has learned the secret that few dare to understand, the power of wasting nothing. The common man spends energy like an unconscious rich man spends money. He lives on the overdraft of his own vitality, and then doesn't understand why he's broke. Semen retention teaches the principle of energy conservation. Spend less, conserve more, and invest consciously. It's a philosophy of life. The lazy man, when he awakens, understands this intuitively. He knows that power lies in retain the essential and eliminate the superfluous. True wealth lies not in how much you have, but in how much you conserve. Retention is the purest expression of this principle. Every drop of energy you save is an investment in clarity, strength, and magnetism. Most people seek more energy by doing more things. The wise do the opposite. They reduce waste. They live a minimalist lifestyle, not only with possessions, but with emotions, thoughts, and desires. This is philosophy applied to life. The person who masters their own energy becomes self-sufficient. They don't depend on external stimuli to feel alive. They don't need artificial dopamine or distractions. Their energy is internal, self-generated, and constant. This is the state of the true spiritual alpha, the one who shines without trying, speaks little, and influences much. The consciously lazy person achieves this effortlessly, simply by being economical with everything that drains them. Energy conservation isn't boredom, it's refinement. It's the act of choosing what deserves your attention and what should be ignored. Every emotion is an expense. Every thought is an investment. The wise man spends energy only on what brings him closer to his essence. He understands that living is like managing an invisible empire. If you waste your strength on trivialities, your inner kingdom weakens. If you conserve, the kingdom flourishes. Semen retention is just the first step of this philosophy. After that, the man begins to conserve words, emotions, and judgments. He speaks less, observes more, reacts less, understands more. And suddenly, what was once laziness becomes presence. The world may be in chaos, but he remains calm. Because he has learned what few understand. Peace doesn't come from what you achieve, it comes from what you stop wasting. The wise lazy man lives like an urban monk. He doesn't escape the world, he simply refuses to lose himself in it. He works, creates, loves, but with moderation. His energy is directed, never dissipated. He understands that everything done with dense, conscious energy has more impact than 1,000 scattered actions. This is the essence of spiritual economy, doing less, but with total presence. Energy conservation is also the cure for anxiety. The man who wastes semen lives in an excess of stimulation, a tired brain, a restless body, an empty soul. But when he conserves, the entire system slows down. A calm emerges that doesn't depend on anything external. He realizes that the deepest pleasure lies not in releasing energy, but in feeling the energy alive within him. It is the pleasure of self-sufficiency. The awakened slacker understands that saving energy isn't about being passive, it's about being selective. He chooses who he talks to, what he consumes, what he thinks about. He doesn't waste attention on things that don't nourish his soul. And so, while others exhaust themselves trying to live longer, he lives better. Retention has taught him that the secret to abundance is restraint, not as repression, but as wisdom. This philosophy changes everything. The man who once sought pleasure now seeks purpose. He who once expended energy on impulse now invests it with intention. The result is inevitable. More vitality, more magnetism, more lucidity. He no longer needs to chase anything. Everything comes to him because his energy is now centered, not peripheral. He becomes the sun itself, immobile, yet a source of movement. In the end, the philosophy of energy economics is simple. Don't waste what makes you divine. Semen is simply a symbol of your creative power, physical, mental, and spiritual. When you preserve it, you preserve God Himself within you. And when the lazy person discovers this, they cease to be lazy, they become wise. Because they realize that the real work isn't about doing more, it's about learning not to waste anything that is already sacred within you.